You thought God was testing your faith. Every delay, every silence, every unanswered prayer felt like a divine exam. But what if it wasn't your faith being tested? It was your focus. Because the system doesn't need to destroy your belief, it just needs to distract it. You pray with your mouth, but scroll with your mind. And while you ask heaven for direction, you give your attention to everything that pulls you off course. The truth is, the test was never about how much you trust God. It's about how easily you lose sight of Him. These are the 7 signs you're not in a season of testing. You're in a season of distraction, carefully designed to look like faith. You wake up and pray. You say the same words, the same verses, the same routine. It feels holy, but it's hollow. Because repetition is not faith, it's distraction disguised as devotion. And that's the first sign. God isn't testing your faith. He's testing your focus. The system doesn't need to take your belief to control you. It just needs to make your belief busy. So you keep moving, speaking, performing, without ever listening. God never asked for your noise. He asked for your attention. But attention is expensive, and the system knows exactly how to buy it. It gives you spiritual content, religious routines, holy habits, all the things that make you feel close to God, while quietly pulling you away from Him. Because real faith doesn't shout. It observes. It waits. It resists distraction. It sees the difference between movement and meaning. The first sign is simple. When your faith becomes performance and your attention becomes profit, you're not being tested by God, you're being trained by the system. God is silent not because He's absent, but because He's waiting for silence inside you. And the system knows. That silence is the one thing it can't control. There was a time when silence meant trust, when waiting meant faith. But now, the system calls it laziness. It whispers, do more, move faster, achieve something. And you listen, not because you've lost your faith, but because you've lost your focus. You confuse movement with progress. You confuse noise with purpose. The system doesn't need to take your soul. It just needs to keep it busy. Because a distracted believer is easier to control than a focused one. So you fill your days with endless doing, thinking you're serving God, while you're really serving the schedule. The altar isn't in the church anymore. It's in your calendar. Every minute becomes an offering. Every achievement becomes a prayer. But God never asked for your speed. He asked for your attention. You think He's testing your faith, but He's watching your focus fade, watching you chase tasks instead of truth, watching you confuse being productive with being present. The system loves your effort, because effort without awareness is obedience without question. And every time you confuse purpose with performance, your attention shifts from the divine to the digital. You think you're working for God, but you're performing for the system. And the system rewards you with exhaustion while calling it growth. The system is clever. It doesn't pull you away from God. It pushes you toward imitation. It gives you goals that sound holy, causes that sound righteous, and busyness that feels divine. You tell yourself, I'm doing this for my purpose. But the question isn't what you're doing. It's who you're doing it for. Because distraction dressed as purpose is the most dangerous obedience. You move with passion, but not direction. You sacrifice peace in the name of progress. You confuse being active with being anointed. The system knows how to use your faith against your focus. It feeds your need to feel useful, while quietly stealing your attention. You think you're walking in your calling, but you're running in circles, inside the cage of constant purpose. The system doesn't say, stop believing. It says, keep doing. It sells you meaning by the minute, and rents your focus through constant urgency. That's how distraction wins. Not by breaking your faith, but by keeping it busy. You think you're being tested by God, but it's not a divine test. It's a system simulation, a perfect illusion designed to make you feel chosen while keeping you chained. And the cruelest part? You thank the system for the chains, because they shine like purpose. You keep asking why God is silent, why the answers stop coming, why the doors that once opened now stay closed. You call it a test. But sometimes silence isn't a test. It's protection. The system feeds on noise. It sells you constant movement, constant connection, constant advice. It tells you that quiet means failure, that stillness means you've lost momentum. But what if God's silence is the only place the system can't follow you? What if his distance isn't rejection? It's resistance, a barrier between your focus and their control. Because the system loves believers who panic when heaven goes quiet. It knows that desperation breeds obedience. So it gives you new voices, new mentors, new distractions, anything to keep you from learning what silence really is. Faith is not proven by how loud you pray, but by how long you can stay still when the world screams move. Silence is the filter through which God removes what's not aligned. It's not a pause in your purpose. It's a purge of your attention. Every unanswered prayer might be a wall protecting you from a door the system built to look divine. You're not being punished. You're being protected. Because sometimes, the only way for God to save your focus is to break your faith in everything that distracted it. At some point, faith stops being what you believe and becomes what you choose to focus on. Because God doesn't live in your noise. He lives in your awareness. The system taught you that believing is enough. Believe harder, pray louder, work longer. But belief without focus is blindness in disguise. And that's the final test, not of your faith, but of your attention. The system knows how to use your passion to destroy your purpose. It feeds you hope and calls it vision. It feeds you pressure and calls it destiny. It keeps your eyes open, but your mind asleep. God isn't asking you to believe more. He's asking you to see more, to see how the distractions you call purpose are the very tools that keep your soul in traffic. Because in a world built on confusion, focus is rebellion. Every moment you reclaim your attention, you take something sacred back from the system. Faith made you loyal. Focus makes you free. The system can manipulate your beliefs, but it can't command your awareness. That's where God still speaks, not in sermons, not in noise, but in the quiet space where your focus finally belongs to you again. This is the final sign. You stop begging for blessings and start defending your attention, because that's where your real faith lives. This is not a test anymore. It's a war between God and the system, fought not for your body, but for your focus. The weapons are invisible: screens, schedules, followers, opinions. Every ping is a bullet. Every notification, a whisper that says, "Look away." The system doesn't fear your faith. It fears your attention, because attention is creation. Whatever holds it controls you. You pray for freedom, but give your freedom to whatever captures your screen. You shout amen to God, but say yes to every distraction. The system isn't killing your belief, it's cloning it. It gives you digital prophets, emotional sermons, and endless voices that sound holy but serve profit. And while you think you're choosing your faith, your focus has already been sold. The real war isn't about religion. It's about possession. Who owns your time, your thought, your silence? The system doesn't want to destroy God. It wants to become Him. It wants to be the first thing you see when you wake up, and the last thing you touch before you sleep. That's how control works. Not by chains, but by choices. Not by threats, but by notifications. You're not a soldier, you're the territory. And the war for your attention is the war for your soul. One day, the noise will stop. The phone will go dark. The system will lose your pulse, not because it freed you, but because you finally looked away. That's when God moves. Not through thunder, not through fame, but through a whisper that feels like memory, reminding you who you were before the system renamed your faith as performance. You'll realize that God never left. He just waited for your attention to come home. The blessing you thought was delayed was never stuck in heaven. It was stuck behind your distractions. Faith built your foundation, but focus opens your door. Because miracles don't come to the loud, they come to the aware. The system promised control. But God offers clarity. And clarity is what the system fears most. Because when you finally see clearly, you stop obeying blindly. So if you feel lost, stop searching for signs in the noise. The sign is the silence. The silence where your faith becomes still and your focus becomes holy again. You don't need another message. You don't need another promise. You just need to protect your attention, because that's where God still lives, long after the system stops pretending to save you.